Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 429, an intro to Purification, Part 1. The link between purification and the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. The podcast objectives are reveal how we become equal to the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah, reveal why Yahushua is not ashamed to call us his brothers and sisters, and reveal the primary attribute of the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. The firstborn amongst many brothers. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 253 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we analyzed how righteousness eliminates the spiritual disease of unrighteousness, i.e., the focal degree of contempt. And thus, there is one last degree of contempt we must eliminate to end this war. Enter defilement, a spiritual plague that can only be defeated by the critical degree of virtue. Enter purification. By definition, purification is a process in which someone or something is made pure. Freedom from anything that debases, contaminates, or pollutes. A quantifiable assessment of equality and uniformity with a standard. Now, the critical line in this definition reveals that purification is a quantifiable assessment of equality and uniformity with a standard. This brings us to an early inflection point on this topic. Consider this, my friends. Purification serves as the critical process that allows us to achieve equality and uniformity with the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. Now, in making this a vow, allow me to be very, very clear. Equality with the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah is not equated to equality with his unique and divine personage. Remember, a standard is a template. It is an example. Ergo, by achieving equality with his spiritual standard, we are validating our adherence to his example. And this is evidence that we were chosen to be his brothers and sisters before the foundations of the world. 1 Peter 2:19-25 is revealing. For this is favor, if because of conscience toward Elohim, anyone endures grief, suffering unrighteously. For what credit is there if you endure a beating when you sin? But if you suffer for doing good and you endure, this finds favor with Elohim. For to this you were called, because Messiah also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth, who, being reviled, did not revile in return, suffering, did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously, who himself bore our sins in his body on the timber, so that we, having died to sins, might live unto righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed. For you were like sheep going astray, but have now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your soul. Romans 8:28-30 reveals, and we know that all matters work together for good to those who love Elohim, to those who are called according to his purpose. Because those whom he knew beforehand, he also predestinated to be conformed to the likeness of his Son, for him to be the firstborn among many brothers. And whom he predestinated, these he also called. And whom he called, these he also justified. And whom he justified, these he also esteemed. Now, these passages confirm two crucial realities, which I stated before, and yet I will restate them to ensure that you understand the critical nature of purification. First and foremost, Yahushua Messiah is not only our example, but the example he left us is established upon suffering. For look, listen, it has been written, to this you were called, because Messiah also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps. Not only this, but the same passage confirms that if we follow his steps, i.e., his example, we will overcome our sinful nature and do no sin. For look, listen, it has been written, he committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth. He bore our sins in his body on the timber, so we, having died to sins, might live unto righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed. Now, this brings us to the second crucial reality the Ruach is leading me to address in this lesson. And as you might expect, it builds off the first. Consider this, my friends. In accordance with the scriptures, the chosen elect were predestinated to be conformed to the likeness of Yahushua Messiah, for him to be the firstborn among many brothers. This reality begs the question, how can we be conformed to the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah and continue in sin? Remember, this is a man who did no sin, and no manner of deceit was found in his mouth. The sure answer is we can't, which is why purification is so crucial as it pertains to the process of transformation. Now, we'll discuss that matter at the appointed time. For now, what you need to understand concerning purification is sure, vis-a-vis, we cannot be conformed to the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah if we are not purified of our sins. And this is why he is not ashamed to call us his brothers and his sisters. For as we have suffered with him, we have come to be like him. And this is why we shall one day reign with him. All praises be to the Most High Elohim. The primary attribute of his standard. Now, if you recall, we analyzed these matters thoroughly in our lessons on obedience, specifically our lessons on compliance and conformance. Along these lines, we analyze the primary objectives of these 2 degrees, which I will resubmit to you in the form of a treasure box. The primary objective of compliance is to fall in line with the standards of holiness. And the primary objective of conformance is to follow all the rules of holiness. Now, as I revealed in those lessons, Yahushua Messiah is the standard of holiness. Ergo, all the rules of holiness are designed to achieve one central goal. That is, our assimilation to the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. Look here. This is where purification comes into the picture. To wit, of all the degrees of holiness, purification is the primary degree by which we are evaluated against the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah, a key matter which reveals the following inflection point. The most critical component of the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah is purity. We know this because his purity is the primary reason why he was chosen to be the arm of righteousness who brought salvation unto Elohim. Ergo, the only way we can take advantage of this great salvation is if we ourselves are made pure. And the scriptures support this trust. 1 Timothy 1:5 is revealing. Now, the goal of the command is love from a pure heart, from a good conscience, and a sincere belief. 1 Timothy 5:22, do not lay hands on anyone hastily, nor share in sins of others. Keep yourself pure. 2 Timothy 2:21-22 reveals, if then anyone cleanses himself from these matters, he shall be a vessel unto value, having been set apart, of good use to the master, having been prepared for every good work. And flee from the lusts of youth, but pursue righteousness, belief, love, peace with those who are calling on the master out of a pure heart. Titus 1:15-16 reveals, indeed, all matters are pure to the pure, but to those who are defiled and unbelieving, no matter is pure, but both their mind and conscience are defiled. They profess to know Elohim, but in works they deny him, being abominable and disobedient and unfit for any good work. 1 Peter 1:22, now that you have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit to unfeigned brotherly love, love one another fervently with a pure heart. 1 John 3:1-3, see what love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of Elohim. For this reason, the world does not know us, because it did not know him. Beloved ones, now we are children of Elohim, and it has not yet been revealed what we shall be. But we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And everyone having this hope in him purifies himself even as he is pure. Now, there are many key takeaways from these scriptures, and we will begin to address them in the upcoming podcast. as we continue analyzing the critical degree of virtue. Yahuwah bless you until then. Now, here is the final word. The truth is known and very sure. To be like Yahushua, we must be pure. My dear friends, it goes without saying that many in our nation and our world are not openly hostile to the idea of purification. And yet, it is largely because they have no idea of all that purification entails. Notwithstanding, their ignorance on this wise is not an excuse, for these same individuals would indeed be hostile and averse to the spiritual model of purification if they came to understand all that is required. Here again, this is a very critical topic, which is why the Ruach led me to be intentional in providing you with ample scriptural references. It's because you must come to know the purpose of purification and all you must do to unlock this critical power. Then again, understanding how the counter objective of purification is defilement, which separates us from the Most High Elohim, it should be quite clear how important it is for us to purify ourselves if we are to obtain his seal. Heretofore, I recommend prepare your heart to receive everything Yahuwah wants you to know about purification. And in the end, be very sure. For the key to achieving the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah is purifying yourself, even as he is pure. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on the word you have heard today. And as always, ask the Father to reveal the truth to you. For the children of Elohim live by conviction. And if he has not convicted you, or if you had not heard him concerning these matters, you should pray until you do. Today, I want you to meditate on the word I have shared. And if you have time, I'd like you to go back into the podcast and take a note of all the scriptures I shared on purification if you are led. Along these lines, I'll reference back to these scriptures often throughout this mini-series, and it will be beneficial for you if you have them at the ready for your reference. And it is likely that I will share more scriptures, so you can easily add to the list you've already started. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 429, an intro to purification, part 1. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 430, an intro to purification, part 2. I will post this podcast on Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.